Welcome to the Enter the Mind podcast.
The most real talk, no nonsense podcast on the empowering of the mind.
Why enter the mind? Because it's that room in your house that's been there all along that you've never gone into.
Well, now it's time to enter with two mind coaches dedicated to self-help and the thriving of all human beings.
I'm Kyra Carlin.
And I'm Robert Nelson.
Welcome to Enter the Mind.
This week's episode, since we're at the end of 2020, will be the last one of the calendar year. So that's something to celebrate. Second thing to celebrate is that Kyra and I happen to both be drinking peanut butter banana chocolate shakes completely independently. This was not planned ahead of time, which means that we're on the same wavelength, which means that today's episode is going to be amazing. So today's episode will be about values as we enter the new year, values, goals, etc. But before we get into that, Kyra, what's going on with you?
Well, I'm pretty sure last week I had mentioned that I was getting a cat. I got my cat. And I'm doing super, super good. I'm happy with my cat and I'm happy with my life. How are you doing?
I feel that positivity like sunshine.
Yay.
So I'm doing well. It's we're rounding out the year, and to me a new year is not just, that's the mentality. I see New Year's as an opportunity to lock in a mentality, which is a growth mentality and a mentality of capability and of actualizing potential. And so it's not just once a year that I like to think like this. I like to think like this every day of the year. So there we go. It's somewhat of a segue to the topic, isn't it?
It is. I love those words that you just said. Lock in a mentality and actualizing potential. I really liked the both of those.
Right on. So do you want to introduce the topic and sort of what was the context from which you were coming?
Yeah, so I figured that, I feel like some people, I'm pretty sure that I used to. Some people think that like success in life is so hard or like it's overwhelming. And I agree, sometimes it can be overwhelming, but if you take a few specific values and you understand what they actually mean and the role that they play in your success and you reaching your goals, it honestly becomes quite the enjoyable ride. So I figure we can both talk about some of the ones that we think are most important and have contributed to our success and we believe will contribute to our success individually. So I figure, I wanted to introduce this to our listeners so they can really head into the new year and be like, all right, well, I got all these down. Let's go for it. Let's actualize potential.
All right. I like the sound of that. So what were some of the things that you put down?
I'm gonna do the one that just has the most like the strongest vibration to me, and that's humility. And I think that humility plays a large role in your success because it's like, yes, we are supposed to embody what we know and have conviction in what we know, but you also must be willing to feel humiliated when you are wrong so you can open your mind to a new way that actually works. So I think that humility is a really, really big role in actualizing your goals.
And were you thinking humility kind of as it relates to other people and being sort of like humble and sort of, and not letting your ego get the most of you? Is that kind of what, am I understanding you right?
Yeah, I think you are. Like, I understand the ego for sure. but it's like, yeah, like I think it's like the ego. It's like you need to learn to stop feeding your ego for a moment and just feel for a moment the humiliation of being wrong, because we all hate being wrong, but like you need to be willing to feel humiliated in order to move forward to something that's actually working for you instead of something that is not benefiting you.
I think people say it, you hear it of like certain athletes maybe, or celebrities who kind of don't brag and that are not like in your face. And so you hear of like an athlete, a professional athlete who's actually the best at what they do, but they're very humble. They're like, they just kind of put their nose to the grindstone, they get the job done, and they're not like, look at me. And in terms of, accepting being incorrect, right? Accepting being wrong. That makes me think of the ability to receive feedback. And I was watching The Voice again last night. That show.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so interesting to watch people receive feedback, because you watch their defenses come up. If you look at the invisible layer of psychology, and sometimes it's those defenses come up real strong, and sometimes they're not as strong, and sometimes the person's very receptive to the feedback, and you can tell that they're paying attention. You can tell that, like when else are you going to get very precise feedback from 4 of the best singers in the entire world? Gwen Stefani, Blake Shelton, John Legend, and Kelly Clarkson. It's and they're specific. They say, your vibrato was too strong. Your falsetto needs to be this, right? Mm-hmm. And when I watch this, I'm thinking, holy gold mine. Like, I wish I could get feedback like that from the best in the world. I'd be like scooping that up like it's $100 bills, It's like, grab as much as you can. But you watch this and you see people's defenses start to come up. And you see that manifesting in body language through little bits of tension. They're holding the microphone, and suddenly the feedback starts and they grip the microphone harder, or their facial tension starts to go like, they tighten their lips or something. And the tightening of the body is simply a manifestation of the tightening of the mind. And they want to protect themselves against this potential threat to the ego. And I think it starts with kind of this very value that you're talking about. It starts with kind of being okay with being wrong. And it's great to be able to take feedback from experts in the world, but it's even better to take feedback from reality and from trying something and seeing what happens. That's how scientists do it. Like, do this experiment, see what happens. That's the feedback. And does it make you more or lesser because the feedback was a certain way, because the result was this way or that way? Like, no, it doesn't have anything to do with you. You're learning about the world, right? But people think it's about themselves. So that's a long explanation, but
it was good though.
I don't know how much it intertwines with what you were saying about humility, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Right on.
All right. Tell me one of yours.
I wrote down grit.
Ooh.
I'm looking to go into 2021 with grit. I should rephrase that to fit with my philosophy that I articulated at the beginning, which is every day I expect to practice grit. And I've been watching a lot of Navy SEAL stuff, and it's just amazing what they do. I was watching James Bond, one of the old ones, Thunderball, like old school, like Sean Connery, James Bond movies. And there were a lot of scenes where he was scuba diving and then he encountered the enemy, the henchmen, and they were trying to mess with each other's scuba gear in order to like kill the other person, right? Or like cut the scuba gear tubes. And I thought, my God, this scene is so captivating and terrifying at the same time. I mean, imagine you're scuba diving and someone is trying to attack you by like removing your scuba gear. Like, what are you, you're going to drown. But the reality is that that's actually one of the exercises in Navy SEAL training. You go to the bottom of the pool with your scuba gear and the instructor comes down, blindfolds you, and then starts to mess with your scuba gear. And the whole point of this is for you to not panic and to remain calm and to just get through it and fix the problem, right? I mean, Navy SEALs are the most elite military forces in the world, right? To be a Navy SEAL, you have to have emotional calm, groundedness, clear thinking, logical problem solving, right? And you need grit. You need to be able to get through temporary pain. So, you know, do I plan to go scuba diving every day for 2021? No, but I think you get the point of grit. It's like, you know, imagine if you had entered 2020 with grit, right? All the crap that happened in 2020, and you entered it with this mindset of, okay, you know, crap is going to happen, but I'm here like a Navy SEAL. I'm here to accomplish my mission. It's not going to affect me. I'm going to deal with it, fix it as much as I can, ignore what I can't control, and move on forward.
I love that. It's funny because I feel like grit and resiliency are the two, like, they go kind of like hand in hand. I think they're like the same word. But I definitely think that resiliency is a huge part of manifesting exactly what you want, because, you know, life is going to come in and it's going to punch you in the fucking face. It's going to punch you square in the face. Your nose is going to be bleeding. Maybe your teeth are fucking knocked out, and you're going to get your ass back up. You're going to be like, fuck you. Thank you. And I'm going to move right back on, you know? And I think that has a lot to do with it. You know, my best friend sent me a text last night. You know, The Queen's Gambit, that show on Netflix? Best show. Robert, you would have appreciation for that. You need to watch it. So it's one of the highest rated shows in the entire world right now. I'm pretty sure is what the Post said. And the guy who made it, he had been working on it for 9 years. And it has been rewritten 4 times, and it has been denied a bunch of times because nobody said that, they were like, nobody's going to be interested in chess, right? And turns out it's one of the highest rating things, you know? So after working on it for 9 years, probably getting punched in the face by the world, you know, getting punched in the face by the people who say, you know, that nobody's going to like this, having to rewrite an entire script 4 times, you know, that takes grit. That takes resiliency. When things aren't going your way and you just keep getting knocked down, the ability to get back up and start again and do it again, that's, I think, one of the biggest things, you know, because I feel like a lot of these words, they go in together, right? So resilience, grit, and commitment, I feel like, are really all together, you know, because if you have grit, you have commitment. You know, if you have commitment, you have grit. Because meaning you can always get back up because you're committed to it, and you can always get back up no matter how many times you were knocked down. So yeah, I like it. That's a good one.
So is Queen's Gambit about chess?
It's about chess, and the actress in it, she's one of those really popular actresses, but I can't remember her name. She is the most, like, her character, I'm gonna rewatch the show because her character was absolutely amazing. It's one of the best shows I've ever seen about chess. Yes.
And so it's not, what made you think of it was not the content of what's in the show, but the storyline of how the creator had to go through those multiple versions before
That
they.
was the inspiration for Grit. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, totally. It was interesting that you mentioned chess, so that made my mind, because I wrote down chess on one of my post-its here before you mentioned it, but I guess it's just a synchronicity or somewhat. And when you say it's about chess, you mean like real chess players that are going into tournaments, or like what kind of show is this?
It's a girl, and she learned chess in a basement when she was an orphan, and she became to be the best chess player in the entire world. The best chess player in the entire world.
I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Well, I did write down chess, and what did I write? I want to come back to what you said at the very beginning, because it was pure gold. This idea that success is hard or overwhelming, or at least the idea that most people have, that success is hard or overwhelming. And I think that in many ways, I often fall into that perspective also, but I try to get myself out of that perspective. And it's kind of like, going into the new year, setting these resolutions is kind of like starting a chess game or walking in front of a chessboard and getting all emotional about the ending of the chess game, right? If you enter the new year all emotional, like, yeah, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna get this, I'm gonna accomplish this, yeah. To me, that's not the right approach, because that's like sitting down at a chess table right before the game starts and going, yeah, I'm gonna checkmate, I'm gonna do this, yeah. And chess is played one move at a time. And so I really don't, when I think of New Year's resolutions, at least for this year, right? Past years was different. This year, my perspective is, what's my strategy? I think the strategy outweighs the emotional component of it. And so I'm more interested in what sustainable lifestyle changes am I going to implement, or what sort of new systems am I going to have in place? What am I going to do every single day that, oh, look, there's your cat.
Yeah.
And what did you name it again?
Hera.
Hera, yeah. The goddess of
Women and marriage.
There you go.
Yeah.
So nice to have a guest on our podcast. So consistency to me is kind of, I guess that's another word that I wrote down, consistency. You know what I mean? Just the day to day, but that also relates to grit. It's sort of like just a one day at a time, what can I do today sort of a thing.
I completely agree with that. I feel like most of the things, like, definitely something that I love doing in my business structure, my business strategy, is making sure that almost like if you have one, you have the other. And I think that that's what like the goal that I wanted to portray to our readers today, our listeners today, is that if you have one, you have the other. So if you have grit, you have resilience. If you have resilience, you have consistency. If you have consistency, you have commitment. So all of those. And then I think that another one that is really needed is patience. And I also, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, patience goes right along with grit and resiliency, because it's like, you need patience. Things ain't gonna happen overnight. You know, I was just doing a post on my business page today on Instagram, and I did a spell last February. I gained a lot of weight on the road, and anyone who knows me knows that my body is my prize. I very pride myself in having a nice, sexy, skinny body. And to me, that's sexy, you know, like to me, on me, I like that. You know, I ain't knocking anybody else for their body type. But so I did a spell and I burned a sigil and I stared at the candle with the sigil burning on it for hours. I was like, this is gonna fucking work. Like, I need to get skinny. And next thing you know, my body today is so nice. I'm obsessed with it and I'm only getting it better. And it's about patience. You know, I kept believing in that spell that I did, in that practice that I did, and now it's finally coming to fruition. And I think that that has a lot to do with patience. Patience is believing. If you don't have patience, it's like you don't believe in yourself. If you don't have patience, you don't have resiliency. If you don't have patience, you're not going to stay consistent. And that just ties in with everything going hand in hand.
Yeah, I think it's really cool that you did that. I guess you would call it a ritual with the candle thing, and or you referred to it as a spell. And then you kind of sat back, and for a year, it took like a year before you kind of checked in on the progress. One thing that stands out to me about that is some degree of non-attachment to the outcome, which I think is healthy. And the other is, it really makes me think of the subconscious mind, because I think at times we overestimate the conscious mind, the power of the conscious mind, and we think that we can think our way into success, but there's like this big creature inside of the subconscious that at any moment can step out and squash or punch punch the conscious mind. And yeah, that's kind of funny. I now I'm imagining two different like creatures in the mind, two like monsters, where like in the chamber, the basement is like this like big ogre, nasty looking guy, like, or like Shrek or something, I don't know.
Yeah.
Or like a mean version. And then in the conscious mind is some sort of like professor type, like wearing a suit or whatever, and carrying a calculator. And then the two of them, like the professor guy could be like, okay, I've calculated that I'm going to achieve this goal and this, and I'm going to become this type of person. And I was introverted and now I'm going to become more social, blah, blah. And then right in the middle of all that, the subconscious ogre comes out and goes, "Rah!" And then he smacks the professor, right? And is like, and then all of that effort that you thought you were, right, that you thought that you were making towards that goal is just completely sabotaged by the subconscious mind. And what we need to achieve, I think, more of a harmony between the two. We have to convince the two to work together. We have to tell them that they're more powerful as a team than they are individually. Did that set off any thoughts? Looked like it did.
I think it's interesting because it's like, okay, so you know the idea of the monster, right? So the monster's coming out, right? But it's almost like the professor, the conscious mind with the cute little calculator dressed up in a little suit. He's so smart and he knows where he is, but the fucking ugly ass ogre down there in the basement, he is extremely convincing himself. And it's almost like he sneaks up on the professor and puts a blindfold on him and then leads him to where the subconscious thinks that he should go, right? And I feel like it's easy to be snuck up on like that. It's like you think you're doing so good, and then all of a sudden the ogre comes, and then you wake up. It's like that analogy that we came up with the first time we ever did a video together with the windshield. And the windshield is all dirty, and you wake up in Jabbik, and you're like, God damn, like where was I? You know, where was I going? So then you wake up, and it's almost like you're angry, you're upset because the stupid ogre in your basement got out, blindfolded you, and took you to somewhere that you did not want to go, right? So you wake up, right? And then I'm interested in this concept of convincing the two to work together. And I'm also led to a thought of what, when he wakes up from the blindfold, which one of the things is going to get the professor back to where he wants to be? Is it grit? You know, is it resiliency, right? Because the ogre just came and punched him in the face and brought him to somewhere he doesn't want to be. And I think that it would then take grit and resilience and passion to lead himself back, the professor in our minds, back to where he wants to go. But I mean, the ogre can be so tricky. So how can we make the ogre and the professor work together? What steps can we take for those two to work together? And so that way it could be, I guess, make our lives a little bit easier. You know, it's just a thought. I'm not on to anything, but it's a thought.
You are, and you don't realize that you're onto something. Well, I think in terms of grit, at least one way I see it is that the ogre keeps sabotaging things and making it go his way and conducting these kidnappings, so to speak, of the professor. And so on the professor's part, it takes a lot of grit to keep going. Because the ogre has grit. The ogre will not let you evolve and become a different person by any means. The ogre is very stubborn, I think, and has a lot of grit that no matter what the professor tries to do to make yourself grow, the ogre will sabotage it. Yeah, go ahead.
I thought of something. So don't you then think that the ogre also has the exact same qualities for his goals? The ogre's got grit. He's like, I ain't giving up. I ain't giving up. You know, the ogre's got passion. So I think that what it is that the ogre thinks that we want something different because it's so ingrained in our subconscious mind, right? But all we need to do is have enough grit in our conscious mind as we do in our subconscious mind, you know, the kind of part that we're not really paying attention to. But I guess we are, that's a different can of worms. So, so if the ogre has grit, etc., and the ogre's grit and passion and goal is only manifesting from what we thought in the past, then as we feed our ogre his dinner, and we're like, yeah, take this shit, eat that and fucking like it, right? So he's down there and he's eating up all of this new information that we're feeding him, and eventually I think that our subconscious mind might be able to twist into something else, because if you think about it, it's either that or our entire lives we go through fighting this ogre in our basement and sometimes waking up in a different place. Now, maybe that is how life goes. You know, I mean, I don't remember anything from when I wasn't Kyra, you know, so maybe that is how life goes. But I think that it should be figured out so people can have a better grasp on what actually is going on in their human mind in their life.
Yeah, and I wonder if it tells the story of humankind, the history of humankind, because in any sort of ancient movie of kingdoms or dynasties or whatever, you have some sort of figure in charge, like an emperor or like a Roman emperor, and they may not necessarily be the largest. They may not be the 6'6", 300-pound dude in Rome, but the bodyguards are the 6'6", 300-pound guys in Rome. And the emperor has very good control over those bodyguards at the psychological level, right? Those bodyguards do what the emperor tells them to do. And so how does this look in the mind? And to answer the question you're raising, like, how are they going to work together? I think you're right. It does take grit on the part of the professor or emperor to deal with some of these hijackings, kidnappings, etc. By the ogre. But I think that and here's where I do see so much potential in the human species and their intellect, is that you and I here are talking about this very subject and we're analyzing it. And I think we'll come up with a solution. I mean, the subconscious mind is very emotional, right? So to me, it's almost like a kid that can very well experience emotion. You hand them an ice cream cone and they're happy, like they can feel emotion, but they're not, but they don't yet use like language and these advanced things. You see what I mean? You had a light bulb go off?
Yeah. So I was having a conversation with a friend who was taking me home the other day, and he was talking to me about how money is a mentally challenged child, and how a mentally challenged child, if you're a mentally challenged child, you don't know what you're doing. You always need somebody to take care of you. And if somebody's not taking care of you, it's possible for the mentally challenged child to go running around the streets, maybe running in front of a car, maybe rob a bank, because they're not entirely sure what they're doing. Maybe they'll paint all over the walls, right? So it's like, so he was saying pretty much your money is a mentally challenged child and you are the guardian of it. Your money's going to run the fuck off if you don't take charge of that mentally challenged child, right? So I think that the same thing goes for your emotions and your subconscious mind. It's almost like your subconscious mind is a mentally challenged child, and you need to watch over your child, your emotions. Otherwise, it's going to run off and it's going to take control when it's not supposed to be in control, because it's not developed enough in the mind to be in a position to be having control by itself.
Yeah, I think it has to be like coaxed into something, because you can have like a child saying, I don't want to go to my first day of kindergarten. I don't know anybody. I want to stay home. I don't want, right? And it's very emotion based, and you're not going to persuade them with logical arguments. What you have to do is you have to kind of bring them to kindergarten, to that first day, allow them to meet a couple new friends, other kids that they like. And pretty soon they're going to, your 5-year-old's going to come back to you and say, I love kindergarten, right? And it's like, okay, well, where did that come from? Well, it's, to me, what happens in the process of self-growth is that the subconscious needs to learn through experience, through walking through the fire. They have to learn, like, okay, this fire actually doesn't hurt as much. Or the subconscious mind needs to learn, like, okay, I am okay with this new version of Robert or this new version of Kyra. Like, I'm okay with it. Just like you get acclimated to kindergarten and the 5-year-old suddenly says, okay, I can do this thing. I like kindergarten. It's the same idea. But initially, all of that resistance of, I don't want to go to my first day of kindergarten. I want to stay home. I'm scared of the other students, blah, blah, blah. All of that resistance needs to be recognized as psychic energy, because that's energy that's somewhere in the system that's producing resistance and holding you back from achieving but it's invisible. And so it's very hard to spot.
So are you saying the subconscious is psychic energy?
Well, it's all psychic energy, the conscious and subconscious, but what I'm pointing at specifically is to notice when the subconscious resists something. And we're not aware of that because we operate from conscious mind erroneously. And so we're writing these New Year's resolutions of, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be that, I'm going to accomplish X, Y, Z. But I think that what people don't realize is that there's a big giant ogre in the room that they haven't addressed yet. And so what they are going to need to do is break that ogre in, or at least gradually like introduce or coax them into this new reality. And what's really cool is I think that you did that with the spell or ritual you did with the candle and everything. You said you focused for hours on that candle, right? And on your intention. And that is something you're speaking directly to the ogre in that ritual. You're not speaking to thinking mind, strategizing mind.
I like that. I like that a lot. Now, to notice when the subconscious resists something, right? Now, which one of the values that we wrote down or spoke about today, even the ones we didn't speak about, what breaks the resistance? Which value, right? So say I'm writing down my New Year's resolution and I'm like, I want to speak on 15 stages this year. And all of a sudden, this crazy ass energy starts emitting off of me. And I'm like, I don't think I can fucking do that, right? So which value can we implement in that exact moment to be like, well, maybe I can? Would it be an open mind? Would it be belief in oneself? Would it be belief in the universe? Which value do you think could break that?
I would beat the subconscious at its own game, where I would sort of introduce to it these glimpses of the new reality and how it might be better for everyone. Essentially selling it to the subconscious, introducing images to the subconscious to kind of convince it, the same way you would try to convince your 5-year-old to go to kindergarten. You know, you would bring them there and you would say, oh, look, that kid has the same t-shirt as you. And then they look and see the other kid and they're like, oh yeah, you like Spider-Man too, or whatever. And you kind of coax them into liking it. You kind of show them the new reality, but it's very emotion based.
I like it. I like it a lot. How much time do we have left?
Oh, we're over time already.
Yeah.
What are your closing thoughts for today?
My closing thoughts are, wow, we definitely hit some really good breakthroughs, I think, today, and really helped not only you and I, but our listeners understand a whole lot about the human mind. There's definitely a lot here. So, I mean, happy fucking New Year, man. Fuck what happened this year. If you didn't, reach your goals, just fucking go for it. Use the consistency, use your perspective, your passion, your humility, your patience, your open mind. Be free in your mind and rock 2021 and have patience, because it will fucking happen. It will. Promise.
Nice words there. Yeah. Very grateful for your presence and your energy on this podcast. So that's an expression of gratitude to end the year with. And yeah, we always come up with something organic, because when I woke up this morning, I had no idea that 1 hour later I would be talking about ogres and professors. So to describe the subconscious mind. So but that's what happens when you and I put our minds together and we start, try to unpuzzle this thing. that hopefully will benefit many people, you know, because
Mm.
I think you and I both want to see people reach their full potential and enjoy life and be able to say like, fuck yeah, to any day in their year, any day in their life. So yeah,
Agree. Thank you, by the way, for expressing your gratitude to me.
for sure. All right, well, to be continued in the next episode. And yeah, leave comments for topics that you guys would like to have us discuss in future episodes. And see you then.